Good morning, everybody. As we go to the chitas of today, today is Tuesday. It's the third reading in the portion of Vayeshev. We are holding on chapter 37 in the book of Genesis, chapter 37, verse number 23. Vayhi kashabo Yosef alachav, and it came that when Yosef came to his brothers, Vayishituas Yosef ketunta, so they took off his shirt, his cloak that his father gave him. His containers apasim of the fine woolen coat which was upon him. Rashi says, "As ketunte zeh, this is the shirt. Containers apatim, that's a separate. So he actually took off both things. This is what his father gave him more than his brothers. And they took him and they threw him into a ditch. And the ditch was empty. It didn't have any water. Rashi says, the Medrash says, since it says now the pit is empty, don't you know there's no water? If there's water, it wouldn't be empty. So what is the meaning that it's empty and no water? So the Gemara says, for what the purpose of Torah, right? There was no water. To inform us that maybe there was no water, but there were snakes and scorpions in this pit. And then Vayeshvu, they sat down to eat. And they uplift their eyes. They uplift their eyes, and suddenly they saw a caravan of Ishmaelites that were coming from Gilad. And on their camels, they were carrying all kinds of spices and balm and lotus, going to take it down to Egypt. Now, she's a shayada, like a caravan of merchants. Why did Torah publicize their burden? Why? Who cares what they were carrying? To let us know the reward of the righteous. For it's customary for Arabs carry naft and tar. They were not in the spice business. They were more into the oil business, whose odor is foul. But for this one, this caravan of Yishmaelim, they were suddenly carrying beautiful spices, so that Yosef would not be affected by the smell of the neft, etc. Neches, she says, any collection of many spices called neches, as we find it in the prophets. Sari is a sap that drips from a balsam tree, and this is notis, is sap which enumerated with ingredients of incense. It was used. You can find it in the temple. The light is called the lutisa, the language of the Mishnah. Sages define it as the root of a herb called aristolchi, earthwort. Not sure what it means. A certain kind of herb. Yehuda said to his brothers, what are we going to gain out of killing him? What are we going to gain out of killing him? Because ultimately, throwing him in a pit, you're going to leave him there, he's going to die. So what are we going to gain out of killing him? The chasina is dumb and to cover his blood. Now she says, what kind of value are we gaining out of this? The chasina is done and Nalim will conceal his death. What are we going to gain? Let's go. We'll sell them to these Arabs. We ordained al bay, and we won't have any harm will not be upon him. Because he's our brother. He's our flesh. Yishma and his brothers listen. Yishma, which in Targum translate mina v'kibla, they accepted from him. Every instance Shmiya signifies acceptance, such as the one that said the Yaakov listened. So the concept of hearing, Shema Yisrael, to accept. So there we see why we're going to come next pash, not next reading, that Yehuda steps down, because in essence he could have saved him. His brothers would have listened. He would have took him home. And the Midianites men, also merchants, passed by. And they pulled him out of the pit. They pulled him out of the pit. They And they sold him to the Ishmaelites for Estim Kesef for 20 silver pieces. By Viu as Yosef Mitzrayim. So now she says, what happened? How did Midyanim get into the picture? From this, another caravan inscription for the Torah tells he was sold many times. So how when the sons of Yaakov pulled Yosef out of the pit and sold him to the Ishmaelites, and the Ishmaelites sold him to the Midianites, and the Midianites sold him back to Egypt. So he was sold over here 3 times. He was sold to the Ishmaelites. The Ishmaelites sold to the Midianites, and the Midianites sold him to Mitzrayim Potiphar. Yishma v'Yoshev Reuven alaber, and later on Reuven came back to the pit. V'ine ein Yosef aber, and behold, Yosef is not in the pit. That was his plan. Vayikras begadav, and he rent his garment. Now she says, but when Yosef was sold, Reuven was not there, because that day he had to go back to serve his father. The brothers divided the days in the service of their father. Another explanation, she was busy in the sackcloth and fasting for disarranging his father's bed. It says that that Reuven became a Baal Tshuva. He was really affected by the hurting his father, and he would sit in sackcloth every day and cry over hurting his father. He returned back to his brothers. The boy is not there, and where will I go? And in essence, he understood this concept, because according to what he just said, that he sat in sackcloth for many, many years, that he cried on the hurting his father. And over here again, where will I feed from the pain of my father? How am I going to overcome this? I'm the oldest son, I'm the Bechor, and here again, and I see my father in great pain. I could have taken and saved this kid. Verse 21, so they took the coat of Yosef, and they slaughtered a goat kid. A goat. And they dipped his coat in blood. Now she says, Shiriizim, the blood resembles that of a human. This is a name. But when you can connect it to another word as the Ketenis Yosef, so we know that it's the Ketenis HaPasim. They took that special garment that Yaakov gave to his son. They dipped that garment into the blood. And they sent the fine woolen coat. They brought it. They sent it, and they brought it to their father. They said, "Look what we found. We suddenly were traveling, and we found this coat. Hakana, you bought this coat. Is it whose coat is it? Aksenis binchi. Is it the coat that you gave Yosef?" And he recognized it. And he said, Aksenis bini. It is the coat of my son. Chaya ra chalasei. A wild beast has devoured him. Taref Yosef. Yosef has been torn off. It's interesting, if you listen to the way it happened, actually, you don't see the brothers said anything. The brothers didn't say anything. They didn't say, this is it. They just said, you say, what do you think? And he said it was his son was torn off. They didn't say anything. They didn't say that Yosef was killed. That's interesting. This means the Holy Spirit filled in him. Potiphar's wife would ultimately provoke him. He's going into the den of the lion's den. Yaakov Avinu had prophesied that Yosef, his troubles is starting. His troubles is just beginning. He's going into the lion's den. He's going to become a slave by a person whose wife is going to try to destroy him. Try first to have a relationship with him, and ultimately throw him into a real pit, which is going to be 10 years, 12 years ultimately in the den of Mitzrayim. So that's what's going to happen. Now, why did the Holy One, blessed be He, not reveal the truth to him? Why Yaakov Avinu didn't know? because the brothers excommunication and cursed one another who would reveal it. And they included God. They warned the brothers of tzaddikim. And they said nobody is allowed to tell, right? Because the question is, imagine the brothers, especially Reuven, watching his father in pain and not just screaming out, don't worry, he's alive. So they made a shvua that nobody would tell Yaakov the truth. And they kept it a secret for over 20 years. And they a shvua of excommunication. And even God, they put in God, they said, God, you cannot tell him. Isaac, however, knew that he was alive, but he also kept it a secret. How can I reveal if the Holy One, blessed be He, does not wish to reveal it to him? So if God doesn't want to tell Yaakov, why should I tell Yaakov? So he kept it a secret. I just can't imagine this. Everybody knew this truth, and Yaakov Avinu, look what happens in the next verse. And we know that Yaakov Avinu sat and lamented his son for years and years and years. Vayika Yaakov sim leisav, and Yaakov ran garment, tore his garments. Vayosam sakal mosav, and he put sackcloth on his loin. Vayisabel abanoi yomim rabim, and he cried for his son many days. Rashi says, how many years did Yaakov cry for his son? Chaf bei shana, 22 years. By the time he left him and went down to Egypt, as it says, Yosef was 70 years old, and he was 30 years old when he stood before the Pharaoh, and 7 years of plenty. From this is already 2 years of famine. So there's 9 years of together with 13. When Jacob came to Egypt, here we have 20 years, 20 years of Jacob did not fulfill the mitzvah to honor his father and mother. He went away for 22 years. 20 years he was by Laban's house, and it took him 2 years to come back from Laban's house. 1.5 years in Sukkot, 6 months in Bethel. This is what he said to Laban, that this was 20 years for me in your house. They are from me, upon me. I will ultimately suffer for 20 years, responding to them. So these what happened ultimately, because he went away for 22 years. He was punished that Yosef would disappear from him for 22 years. And you can imagine the pain that Yaakov went through for 22 years, and his children watching this pain, controlling themselves not to say anything. Verse 35, and all his sons and his daughters rose to console him. Nachem refused to be consoled. And he said, because I'll descend on the account of my son, as a mourner to the grave. And his father wept for him. Now she says, who was his daughter? He had no daughters. He had only one daughter. Rabbi Yehuda says, so this is the famous Medrash. It said that the sister was born with each tribe, and they actually married them. And the Nehemiah says these were the Canaanites women. Well, what means his daughters? Because a person did not hesitate to call his son-in-law a son, and his daughter-in-law his daughter. So your son-in-laws and your daughter-in-laws are called in the Torah as sons and daughters. By Yimal and Nachem, why wasn't he consoled? We know that a person passes away, God forbid, after a year, they are consoled. No one accepts consolation for a person who really alive. That's, you understand, the pain and suffering of people that don't know where their loved one is. It's a great pain that they cannot bring him to burial. He can never outlive this. God forbid, nobody should go through this, but believes he's dead. But it's decreed that the dead person should be forgotten from the heart. That's why after 12 months, but not a living person. And that's why Yaakov Avinu, for some reason, he really cannot be consoled. He didn't realize that his son is still alive. That's why he could not be consoled. Avil She'ula, Rash says, according to the simple meaning, the term denoting the grave, In my mourning I will be buried, and I will be not consoled all my days. According to the Medrash interpretation, I will Sheol means Gehenim. The sign was given in my hand from God that if one of my sons dies within my lifetime, I am assured not that I will not see the fate. I'm assured that I will not see. If none of my sons die, I'm saying, within my lifetime, I was assured I'll not see Gehenim. Yaakov said, I had a concept like that, and now I lost my son. I'm afraid that I'm going to see Gehenim. Refers to Aviv says this refers to Isaac. So Avram, Yitzchak was crying, and Yaakov was crying. He was weeping over the Yaakov. So he knew that Yosef was alive, but he cried for the pain of his son. But did not mourn for Yosef, for he knew he was alive. Verse 36. The Midianites sold him to the Egypt. The Petifa Sris Pare, they sold him to Paro's chamberlain, Sarah Tabachim, the chief of the slaughters. So he used to slaughter the animals for the king. And now Yosef is in Mitzrayim, is in the land of Egypt. That completes the Chumash for today. So we're in the middle of the introduction of the Alter Rebbe to the Tanya. So let's go back. The return to the third of our earlier arguments, even if the subject of halachas we find differences of opinion arising from relative human nature. Halacha Torah was given to the Am Yisrael that they would learn it, and ultimately that's why the rabbis that learned the Torah Leiba Shamayim, and the rabbis established halacha based on the Torah. They understood it in their own kind of way, and again, that's why Hillel was more lenient and Shammai was more stringent in general. Siddiq saying, quoted above, that seeing in the book, even Torah books, is not the same as hearing. Inspiration from a teacher seems quite justified. How then could the Alter Rebbe now propose to offer the Tanya to his followers as a substitute for personal guidance that he had been giving them until then? So the Alter Rebbe, in essence, wants to tell them, I cannot meet everybody anymore. It's just too many people. And the answer, the Alter Rebbe states in Tanya, is addressed to his Chassidim. Alter Rebbe, you'll soon see, Alter Rebbe says, in essence, Alter Rebbe says something very powerful in the next statement, that the Alter Rebbe talks to every soul. As I say many times, that when you come to learn Tanya, you have to imagine you're having a chiddush with the Alter Rebbe. That's what you have to imagine. You're having a personal audience with Alter Rebbe, and he knows you because you're having this personal relationship, and therefore he knows your soul, and he's going to answer something to your soul. So the Alter Rebbe says, I'm talking to every Yid as a chassid of mine, with whom is long-standing relationship, and whose specific needs and for guidance are known to him from this personal audience with him. They will therefore find advice provided Tanya relevant to each individual. The Alter Rebbe says, I know you. And since I know you, this book is like my personal relationship with you. It's like my personal yechidus with you. Sidon would add that this includes all those who studied Tanya. The Alter Rebbe knew them all and addressed himself to each one's need in the service of God, as though they had spoken to him in a private audience. As I said, the Alter Rebbe says, "I know your neshama. I'm trying to talk to your soul, and I know your soul personally." As the Rebbe Rashab phrases, the study of Tanya is to converse with the Alter Rebbe. That's what they say. You learn Tanya, the Rebbe Rashab says, you learn Tanya is like you're sitting in a private rechidus, like you're sitting and having a conversation with the Alter Rebbe. And that's what the Alter Rebbe wanted to come to Tanya. He wants to have a private, personal conversation with you. So therefore, even though we're learning in a group together, nevertheless, you should learn Tanya, and you should feel that you're having this private conversation with Alter Rebbe, who knows you. That's what the Rebbe says of it. I speak, however, to those who know I know, who knows me well. Each and every one of you of Anash, Ma'anshe Shlamenu, Shebendina, from this country and those that are close to it. With whom affectionately words were often changed in private audiences. And it was revealed to me all the hidden recesses of their hearts, in their minds. Hashem, self-understood, we're talking about the service of God. Hatluyis belev, which is dependent on the heart. Aleim, I'm talking to you who we have a relationship. Titov Malasi, may my words seep through to you. My tongue shall take the form of a scribe's pen. In these pamphlets. Anekroim, which I have called Lekutei Amorim, a compilation of teachings. Mulukotim, which is compiled Mipi Seifrim from books, Umipi Seifrim Kochi from teachers of heavenly saints. The Shmasi Aiden that are in heaven, I'm for some Etzleinu who are known. And mainly the Alter Rebbe was talking of the Bezitcher Magid and the Baal Shem Tov. And those books, the Arizal. The books and teacher allude to have been explained above in the comments of the title page. Some of these teachings, the wise whom are hinted is sufficient. We'll find alludes to the sacred letters of our teachers in the Holy Land. As mentioned above, the Alter Rebbe considered certain senior disciples of the Maggid as his mentors, and one of them was a famous student of the Maggid Mezitch, which the Alter Rebbe considered as a mentor, and that was a Mendel B'Teps, Menachem Mendel B'Teps, who then resided in Eretz Yisrael. The Alter Rebbe was extremely went after Menachem Mendel B'Teps. He wanted to actually go to Eretz Yisrael. The Alter Rebbe wanted to actually be a student of Mendel B'Teps, but Mendel B'Teps went to Eretz Yisrael, and the Alter Rebbe was left in Russia, and that's how he became the leader of Chabad. And some I heard from their saintly mouths when they were here with us before they moved to Eretz Yisrael. The original Aliyah started off with Chassidim from the Maggid Mezitch, who moved to Eretz Yisrael from Russia. That was we talking about in the late 1700s, who moved from Russia to Eretz Yisrael, which we know the Baal Shem Tov wanted to go, and the Alter Rebbe, etc. So this was the original ones who went up to Eretz Yisrael when it was not in to make Aliyah to go to Eretz Yisrael. And it was extremely, as you know, all the letters that we learn later on and get us HaKodesh all to collect money for these Jews because they had no capability of making a living in Eretz Yisrael. It was just not capable, not impossible for them. And therefore, the Alter Rebbe created Kol Chabad, created an organization that would support these Jews in Eretz Yisrael. And all of them are answers to many questions. As a Shalom Be'etza, which was posed continuously by Anash, by Anshe Shlomeinu, by our people, which are constantly seeking advice. Each according to his stature in the service of God. To receive guidance for themselves, Hashem in the service of God. Because the time is no longer permitted to me. To me to reply to every single one, al shelas pratas on his particular query. It's impossible. Sidim grew too big for the Alter Rebbe to be able to answer everybody and have a personal audience. And especially forgetfulness. I might tell people things and then they forget what I told them. Therefore, I recorded all replies on all questions. The Mishmeres Leis, it's preserved as a sign and to serve as a reminder. Lias Lakal Echad V'Echad. It's a Kanim Bein Eina, which is a reminder, but he always can open up to Tanya and he can have this private relationship with me. And they will have to need the pressure of having this private audience. Because in the Tanya, you're going to find you'll find tranquility for his soul. The eights and true counsel. Anything that you'll find hard. Ba'avodas Hashem, in the service of God. Thus, his heart will be firmly secure in God, who completes and perfects everything for us. Therefore, the Rebbe is saying, now you should have a relationship with me. We're all trying to create a relationship with God, and I'm trying to help you out in that relationship. Whoever, those whose mind is too limited, those whose minds are too limited to be able to derive advice from these teachings. So it's hard sometimes to understand the Tanya. So you should go and learn with somebody who can help him out. A scholar and somebody who can teach him. And they will enlighten him. The most important, the Alter Rebbe says, because those people that can teach others. I requested did not lay their hand upon their mouth, meaning not to keep silent when asked advice. When somebody comes and asks you, can I learn with you, Tanya? You shouldn't say, don't become humble suddenly and say, I'm not worthy to teach you. So sit down for fear of appearing too proud of their knowledge. The Sani Banova, to conduct himself false modesty, shall sheker chas b'shalom. It's misplaced modesty. If you can teach somebody else Tanya, if you can learn with somebody else, you should. It's well known, bitter punishment, especially the Gemara. Somebody can feed somebody, doesn't feed somebody. Terrible thing. You have the food. You don't want to give it to somebody else that needs the food. It's expression of Gemara. So in essence, you have the knowledge. You don't want to give somebody else the knowledge. That's a terrible thing. That's what the Rebbe would always say. He said to somebody said to him, you're asking everybody to teach others. I'm not so knowledgeable. So the Rebbe answered him, you know Aleph Beis? So he said, yes. So teach Aleph Beis. Teach Aleph Beis. There are thousands of Jews out there that don't know the Hebrew alphabet. So if you know the Hebrew alphabet, teach the Hebrew alphabet. And you're giving somebody else the alphabet that they don't have. And if you don't do that, then that's the Gemara expression, that you're a person who withholds food for somebody that needs food. Meaning withholding Torah knowledge, one who seeks it. Thousands of Jews out there that want to learn Aleph Beis. Teach them Aleph Beis. If you can teach them Chumash, teach them Chumash. If you can teach them Gemara, teach them Gemara. If you can teach them Tanya, teach them Tanya. Don't become humble suddenly and say, I'm humble. I have nothing to give somebody else. I have nothing to teach somebody else. That's untrue. That's a lie. So therefore, that's why we know. Siddur teaches you. You meet another Jew. What did you meet him for? You met him for socially. You met him that you should give him something in godliness and spirituality and Torah that he doesn't have. And therefore, give him something that he doesn't have. Give him a mitzvah. Ask him to do a mitzvah. Give him a word of Torah. Give him a word of Hebrew, whatever the person's missing. But Geidel Aschar. And how much is the reward? If you can understand what the Gemara says, that a person that holds back spiritual food for somebody who needs spiritual food, what the punishment is. How great is the reward when somebody doesn't do that? Granted to one who provides such knowledge. It's well known from the comment of the sages that said, Meir Einish Avaya, God enlightens the eyes of them both. The verse reads, the pauper and the wealthy man meet. God enlightens eyes of both of them. The Gemara applies this to the pauper in Torah knowledge and the one who's wealthy in Torah. When they meet, you might think you met for no reason. No, you met to impart knowledge. And the wealthy man teaches the pauper. God enlightens the eyes of both of them with the light that transcends them both. The Eibishter gives them both greatness. Because you did God's work. God came to the world. And Torah itself came to the world to lighten up another person, to bring light to that person, and that person came to you. Bashgacha pratis, divine providence, you met this person. What did you meet him for? You met him so that you would enlighten his life. Ki yara Hashem panav aleim, that God will cause his face to shine upon them, with them. With the light of the countenance of God, which provides light. May he who provides life to the living grant us the privilege of living to see the days. When Mashiach comes, we'll all be great sages. There'll be no longer will one man need to teach another one to know me. God says, because everybody will know me. Because the Mashiach comes, everybody will be a revelation of godliness. Everybody will know God, from the smallest to the greatest. As the Rambam says, that when Mashiach comes, the knowledge of God will fill the earth as the waters of the sea. Amen. May this be his will, that Mashiach should come, and the knowledge of God will be given to the whole world. And every Jew, every human will see the God. They won't have to have somebody to inspire them. They'll be inspired themselves. Until then, we came to the world to inspire each other. Therefore, every one of us should be an inspiration to others. And that completes the Tanya for today. Today is the 22nd day of the month, which is chapter 106 and 107. If you do those two chapters, you do the chitas of the day. Wish you all a beautiful day. See you tomorrow, Midshem. We'll continue to learn the chitas of the day at 8 a.m. Have a wonderful and beautiful day.